Yo, what's up? This is your guy Ray Hanma, one versus a million. I'm not your fan, I'm not your stand, for I am brother. Thank you guys for coming through. This is the Hanma Force. And yes, we're about to be having the Hanma Force movie night, which I will be starting sometime soon after this stream. This is the introduction to the movie night. So, in which I will also be hosting the Geek-verse news, um, things relating to the Geek-verse. And if you will, if you want, go ahead and throw in anything you got, like relating to the Geek-verse, things that are up and coming, shows, anime, whatever. Give it all. Throw it all in there in the comment section, whatever. And so, shout out to you guys. Yes, this is the first stream of the year, so that we are having, and yeah, and I got some videos for you guys lined up. And please hit the like, share, subscribe, and hit the follow over here on the Rumble. So yes, man. And also after this movie night, we're also going to be having a Homo Force anime night, which will be following up with our ongoing series, Kingdom. We will be starting off where we left off. So, and yes, and woo wee, this is the Great War. So things are going down. You hear me? So yes, man, and yes, and speaking of things coming out, the Avengers Doomsday, in which I believe when that comes out, that's going to be a big talk. That's going to be a real big talk. So, and also too, hit the Cash App, which is in the chat in the description. Yeah, none of good stuff. So, bless time force. Thank you. But yeah, uh, man, and I imagine this is going to be like the big talk of like for a great while. Like motherfuckers going to be coming out. Just imagine, all the memes and the sound bites that people are going to be taking from this damn movie, in which we find out, right, that the runtime for Avengers Doomsday is going to be around 3 hours and they said 3 hours and what, 45 minutes, some shit like that. Maybe close, like a quarter off from being like what, 4 hours, close to 4 hours long. So yeah, so I'm kind of curious about that one because yeah, y'all gonna have to fit everything you guys need to put in there within that time frame. Like this is like y'all coming to Jesus moment with this movie. So, with the fans before motherfuckers be just completely done with y'all and just stay focused on just other projects that are going on when it comes, especially when it relates to anime. So, because we got, keep in mind, we have more than just one country that is creating anime. So yeah. um, Speaking of which, yeah, and there was like other bunch of videos too that I was wanting to share. Some that I haven't, watched yet, so I can listen to these guys giving a deep background of these different franchises that I'm, very hip to. So yeah. But thank you guys, man, for coming through. Yes, yes, man. And good numbers for the last two streams, on the Rumble side. So yeah, which is awesome. So yeah, appreciate that one. But yeah, man, and shit. So and yeah, speaking of which, they said they have what the new Black Panther is gonna be popping up in the damn in the Avengers Doomsday, a whole bunch of motherfuckers. So yeah, as it should be. Damn it, with three and a half, almost 4 hours long. Shit. But then And then you got the other projects that are coming out after Avengers Doomsday. You know, the Secret Wars and all that shit. People are going to be comparing those movies to Doomsday as in a scaling of which one is better. So yeah, let's and good morning to you guys. So yeah, let's start off with one from this brother, Tyrone Magnus. Oh man, shout out to this guy, man. Shout out to this guy. So this one, you know, I got from him, which he just came out with this video he posted of this new and related to this new upcoming Batman. Yeah, I was like, okay, whatever. Are you serious? All right, yeah. So I'm like, yeah, we. I was like, I gotta share this with you guys because, yeah, I'm having some thoughts on this. So, without further ado, let's check this shit out.
Well, if that's the case, I'm not even going to see the movie. I'm staying my behind home. Won't be watching it. I'm sick and tired of all this modern audience garbage. However, if she is someone else, fine. So, let's check this out. Scarlett Johansson might be the Batman 2's real Two-Face. Someone sent me something like this weeks ago. And I was just like, no. It's like a week or two ago, someone sent something like this to me talking about this. And I was just like, I'm not even. However, now that, because, and especially I also had not seen I hadn't seen any columns at all pick up the story. It was just like a page or two that talked about rumors. It wasn't nothing at all. So it wasn't anyone I recognized as being leakers that are usually, you know, that come out with some stuff that's correct. You know what I mean? Says here, as I suspected last month, new casting chatter suggests Scarlett Johansson's role in the Batman Part 2 may be far bigger and darker than originally thought, and that she might actually be Two-Face. Jeff Snyder on the Hot Mic sources indicate that Mrs. Dent could have a larger role than Harvey Dent in the sequel. Okay, Gilda Dent. If that's the case, it isn't a stretch to think Mrs. Dent having a larger role would be Two-Face. Also recall how director Matt Reeves said that the villain hasn't been done before. Well, I haven't seen a female Two-Face. I have seen a female Penguin, though, in that garbage Batman show that came out. Earlier reports linked Johansson to Gilda Dent, Harvey's wife, but Snyder's latest info hints that her character may be more central than previously believed. In the Batman Earth 1 graphic novel, Harvey Dent has a twin sister named Jessica Dent. Okay, I haven't heard of her. Jessica becomes mayor of Gotham and later takes on a Two-Face-like identity after her own personal crisis. Interesting. If Reeves is drawing from Earth 1, Johansson could be playing Jessica Dent instead of Gilda Dent, or some combination of both, giving her a path that leads directly to villainy without the traditional Harvey Dent arc. The Long Halloween. In The Long Halloween, Harvey Dent's tragic fall into becoming Two-Face is one of the story's core arcs. The comic also gives Gilda Dent a surprising twist. She's implied to be the original holiday killer, secretly murdering mobsters in hopes of giving Harvey a better life, adding a dark layer to her character. Now, that I like. That I like. I'd be down with that, but I'm not down with the gender swap Two-Face at all. Reeves could also be loosely adapting part of the story for the Batman Part 2. Under this scenario, we can assume that Johansson's character starts strong, possibly as a Dent family figure with influence in Gotham. Okay, I'm down with that. If they want to do that and make her, actually like that. I like that. But I'm not going for the whole, oh, no. I'm just, it just shows they're still on board with the garbage, the modern audience crap. I'm tired. I'm tired at this point. You know, and it don't even make me mad. I'm just tired. I'm just like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'll review something else when that movie comes out. You know what I'm saying? Post the comments down below. Let me know what you all think. If you enjoyed my thoughts on this, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share. 10 million subscribers. Woo.
Well, yeah. Okay, my thoughts on that one. I'm kind of with him on that one. They give like a good, decent reason. I mean, it still really ain't no reason, but I ain't gonna like say, okay, it's all cool, good and cool that they're changing up the gender roles of Two Face, where he should be a damn man and not a damn woman. Now they did a dynamic where, okay, she ends up, catching like, you know, the whole like the whole symptoms, or whatever, what Two Face got, for him to become like Two Face or whatever, but she ended up becoming Two Face in her own way, in a different way than Harvey Dent, than with his storyline. And let's say they tag team, whatever, and they make their shit kind of like so super villainous and darkish or whatever. It's like, cool, I'll be with something like that, but not just like, just the whole female Two Face, just doing the whole gender swap and just, nah, I'm not with it or whatever. But if her, like, if they're giving her like a little, and she's basically whatever she's doing, she's, and part of her mission is to, in being in honor of Harvey Dent, then, you know, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I might be cool with that, but still, like dude said, I'll be watching something else during during the time of when that shit comes out. Something that's more awesome and more gravitating. So yeah, well, that was cool. Shout out to Tyrone Magnus. Shit, Tyrone. Shout out to you. But all right, so yeah, let me go ahead and share with you guys our next one. Yeah, let me get these out the way. I don't have many of these videos, so beware. So I can go ahead and get to the movie night. All right, so yeah, so hold on, let me get to it. Okay. This is Berserk news. This is for me. I haven't seen this video yet. I'll be watching it the first time with you guys. So you guys who are fans of this franchise of Berserk, you can do it with me. All right, here we go.
When Berserk first started, who would have thought that a literal child would become one of its most important characters? We didn't, and yet that's exactly what's happened with Shirkei, the literal definition of an anime best girl. This young lady has fought monsters 10 times her size and lived to tell the tale. She has used magic that impresses even the most experienced practitioners of Arcana, and she has skills that might just make her the key to winning Berserk's final battle. But is that true? And how much of Shirkei's influence is actually important for that final battle? We're going to answer all those questions and more in this video, so without further ado, let's get right into it. She's the only one who can channel the Berserker armor. One of the biggest aspects of the final battle is going to be the use of the Berserker armor beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's perhaps the strongest weapon in the arsenal of humanity right now, but as longtime viewers of our channel know, it's also quite unstable. Despite being armor, we're calling it a weapon because it's a lot like a double-edged sword. It might cut your enemies down to size, but it can also cut into you and try to devour your life force before you can say the words "Open Sesame." The Berserker armor was designed to push a human being past their natural limits. It does that by negating the sensation of pain and pushing one's nervous system into overdrive. Where acts like leaping across a field were impossible before without the assistance of a magical object like the Sylph Cloak, they've become run-of-the-mill with the Berserker armor because it forces the user's body to expend that kind of energy no matter the cost to their bodies. And that cost is heavy, because every limit-breaking move you make leaves you injured, and before you know it, 2 spectacular moves have started making you bleed like a pig on a chopping block. That's what happened to Guts when he first used the armor, because even before going after his main target at the time, he started bleeding profusely. And moreover, if your mind isn't anchored and your ego collapses, the armor will simply take control of you and make you kill anything that moves on sight. It warps the perception of the user in order to eliminate threats without discrimination, and that includes friends, because when everything looks like gnashing teeth threatening to tear you apart, differentiating between friend and foe becomes the least of your worries. The biggest problem the armor's current user has is holding it back from hurting his friends, because Guts' malice is so strong that it instantly activates the Berserker armor like he's dropped that cowboy hat he was wearing during the Golden Age. But that's also where Shirkei comes into the picture, because she's the only one so far who's been able to hold the armor back and make it function optimally without hurting Guts too much. The first time he fought as the Berserker, it was easier for her to infiltrate the armor's ode and clear up his warped perception precisely because it was his first time. After that, things got progressively more difficult because the Berserker armor is semi-alive and it really doesn't want anyone messing with its desire to rampage. Shirkei has been blocked from entering it while it's causing havoc on at least a couple of occasions because it knows she's an anchor for Guts' mind, but that doesn't stop her from trying. One time, when her luminous body got knocked back into her physical body, she risked her life to stop Guts' rampage by climbing on his back and forcing the Berserker armor open. It was a dangerous gamble, and one even he told her not to repeat, but it had a side effect that proved to be quite advantageous later on. In touching the Berserker armor while it was active, Shirkei's luminous body kind of merged with its ode and Guts' ode, and it made her a driver. So later, when they teamed up against a massive sea monster, whom we'll get to in just a second, she was able to merge her ode with theirs before the armor was activated and guide Guts to victory against insurmountable odds. Granted, Shirkei's projection skills aren't the best at stopping a Berserker rampage. That would be the Moonlight Boy's, because his luminous body has halted the Berserker in its tracks on those occasions where Shirkei failed. But with enough preparation, she is the one who will be able to channel its power optimally alongside Guts, which already makes her a major war asset. Her knowledge of Arcana is rivaled only by great mages. Apart from being the person who can draw out the Berserker armor's full strength, while negating many of its heavy costs, Shirkei is also an expert on the astral world and the art of Arcana, which makes her even more important in a world that's been overrun by astral creatures. Even when she was introduced, it was clear to us that this little girl was going to be crucial in the final battle because she was able to correctly identify Griffith as the prophesized Falcon of Darkness, the one who would bring an age of darkness unlike anything the world had ever seen. Her ability to use her luminous body and merge it with creatures like birds is already quite refined, but that's not all. Manipulating Ode to confuse people and astral creatures is second nature to her because she was able to help the group infiltrate Klipoff by tricking the trolls that were present in that space, and she was able to walk around Vertanis, the center of power for the Holy See, in her witch's garb by leaving the guards confused. Preteen Shirkei is able to locate and channel nature spirits like she was born for that purpose, and she's proven it on 4 separate occasions. The first was in Enoch Village, where despite the dampening effects of the village church, she was able to find an ancient shrine dedicated to a water spirit and use that spirit's power to summon a torrent powerful enough to wash away every troll, ogre, and kelpie in the region. This power was so strong that even Guts was shocked by it because it ended up changing the landscape itself, and that was just the beginning. In Clip-Off, she summoned the power of a spirit of darkness called the Rotting Root Lord and used decay on multiple packs of trolls. Spirits of darkness are much harder to control simply because their wills conflict with the goodness in a magician's heart, and so she wasn't able to sustain her summoning for too long, but she held out long enough to get the job done, and much longer than even she had anticipated. In Vertanis, during the Black Swordsman party's battle with the demonic forces of Emperor Ganishka, she was able to summon and channel a vengeful fire spirit called the Wheel of Flame not once, but twice. The first time she used it to possess a giant wheel at the Vertanis harbor and decimate Ganishka's Daka and land-based Pishacha forces. The second time, she channeled it through Dragonslayer to help take down the immensely powerful water spirit being wielded by their enemy called the Kundalini. We'll get back to that in just a moment because we need to talk about Shirkei's final summoning flex in the series. That flex occurred at Elfhelm, where she summoned a spirit of darkness from a tree hole where other mages couldn't even detect it, and she attributed this to her battle experience and growth, but her innate talents were to thank just as much. And this is also where we go back to that Kundalini we were talking about, because her battle against an Eastern sorcerer proved her worth as a major war asset big time. When Guts & Co. met Daiba for the first time, Shirkei was intimidated by him because he used a subset of magic that was completely unknown to her. She was trained in the Western world's understanding of arcana, but Daiba used Eastern schools of magic, which relied on hand seals and chanting to summon massive hordes of demonic beings. The battle against the Kundalini was a coming-out moment for Shirkei, Guts, and Serpico because they realized that even with zero preparation, their little witch was now experienced enough to improvise a winning strategy. It was her astral perception that located the true body of Daiba's Kundalini, and it was thanks to her channeling of the Wheel of Flame that Guts was able to evaporate the Kundalini's watery outer shell so that Serpico could use the Sylph Sword on its real body and kill it dead. Speaking of the Sylph Cloak, Shirkei was the one who gave our heroes their signature magical weapons and explained to them how they work and how they can intensify their powers by simply aligning with and appreciating the spirits that dwelled within. And despite being an apprentice mage, she knows that Guts and Casca's brands are warping the very space around them and that the Behelit is an ominous object rooted in evil energies. This acute understanding of the astral world and its inner workings is what allows her to take on the most difficult apostle to deal with in all of Berserk, Emperor Ganishka, because she's able to accurately identify that his apostle form isn't physically manifested. She explains to Guts that Ganishka's thundercloud form is rooted in deeper layers of the astral world where he subdues Undines and Sylphs to generate his awesome powers. And this leads to Guts and Zod formulating a plan for taking down their intangible enemy. Using Shirkei's ability to detect the precise location of one's astral body, they hone in on the brow of Ganishka's thundercloud form and use Guts' Dragon Slayer, steeped in astral energy thanks to his years of cutting down dead spirits and worse, to kill a thundercloud. The young witch was also the first person to realize that Yzma was a human marrow hybrid, just based off the girl's aura, so that's something to keep in mind as well. There have been several occasions where Shirkei's formation of the Four Kings has brought our protagonists enough time to formulate counterattack strategies, and in fact, she was the one who recognized the 4 elemental kings as the cardinal angels described in the scriptures of the Holy See, revealing that she can actually unravel the mystery of the first eclipse when all the pieces are put into place. Shirkei can even replicate Flora's immensely complicated brand of sacrifice dampening talisman, which makes use of advanced arcane concepts and techniques, hinting that her knowledge in this case will be able to help our heroes formulate a similar tactic to seal up the God Hand's influence forever. She also recognized the seals placed outside of Yzma's home and the sea god's lair, which indicates that her ability to understand and dissect her surroundings is on a level above everyone else. Her healing skills are the reason Guts is still alive, and the fact that Shirkei started teaching Farnesé magic long before they reached Elfhelm is proof that she's an expert in the subject, on par with some of the great gurus of Elfhelm. In fact, when she reaches Elfhelm, she's able to diffuse the preliminary security measures by herself, The fact that she was able to outclass everyone at Elfhelm who had been studying magic since their earliest days on day 1 alone was proof enough for us that Shirke is something special, and this was proven when she actually helped take down a rather troublesome enemy. She's killed a godlike figure already. The goal of Berserk's final battle won't be just to stop Griffith, it'll be eradicating the God-Hand's influence from the world entirely. To that end, we think it's rather helpful that Shirke has already helped defeat a deity in the form of the Sea God. The Sea God was perhaps the greatest challenge that Guts has ever faced in his entire life because it was the size of Emperor Ganishka in his Shiva form, yet completely in control of itself. It wasn't a mindless being, aimlessly spitting fire from its many mouths and creating pseudo-Ganishkas on instinct. It was cold and calculated, selecting its targets carefully and assimilating them within its own body to then turn them into extensions of itself. During the boat arc, Guts and his companions dealt with a 3-ship pirate fleet quite easily, thanks to the naval expertise of Captain Prince Roderick of Ith. But then those ships and their crews became thralls of the Sea God, and it took Guts to beat them back into the sea again. After that, they arrived at Yzma's island, and Shirke was instantly able to recognize that something was wrong with the place. When she saw the Sea God's idol all over the village, she connected it to the ominous ode she was sensing, and her investigations reveal the true source of the Pirates of the Caribbean-style Kraken that they fought on their way to Yzma's island. Now, it's true that the confrontation with the Sea God and its results were completely dependent on Shirke. Guts did most of the heavy lifting over there because his battle experience was what led that expedition. When they entered the Sea God's cave, Shirke thought they were going to fight each individual tentacle monster from the outside and work their way in. Guts was the one who used his knowledge of anatomy to directly jump into the monster's jaws and cut his way up to its heart chamber. In fact, Shirke learned a lot about how to deal with an enemy in that moment thanks to Guts, and that knowledge will come in handy during the final battle simply because of the shape of the Sea God's heart. That thing looked exactly like the idea of evil, which suggests to us that a final battle will feature the idea in some way, shape, or form. If it does, Shirke now knows how to bypass the difficult obstacles and get to the root of things. And even during the battle with the Sea God, she played a crucial role in bringing it down by guiding Guts towards its heart. Because of the submerged nature of the entity, walking in its heart chamber was like walking on the ocean floor. Sound carried so well in that place that Guts was temporarily blinded and rendered deaf. It was Shirke who showed him the path through their telepathic connection, and she was the first one to direct rescue operations as well, because as soon as the Sea God's heart was ruptured, the flow of blood coming out of it was so intense that her luminous body got knocked out of the Berserker armor in its controlled state. All in all, the combination of her knowledge and Guts' strength were the keys to defeating this evil deity, and we're 110% sure that Miura included the Sea God in the story as a prelude to what will happen during the final battle, where a much larger enemy than it will end up making an appearance. And luckily enough, right now, she's smack dab in the middle of enemy territory, which makes her the perfect woman on the inside. She's the spy in the enemy camp and might bring it down from inside. The last time we saw Shirke in her physical body was when she was on the Seahorse as it escaped the ruins of Elfhelm and Skellig Island. She initiated a ritual that even the best of mages would hesitate from performing. She was going to project her body into the World Spiral Tree and navigate its countless branches to reach and rescue Casca. Shirke didn't know if her gambit would pay off, but she needed to try anyways because she owed it to Guts. He was the one who gave her the strength to believe in herself, and if finding Casca was the last thing she ever did, she was fine with it. The ritual ended up involving the entire non-essential crew of the Seahorse because as a regular mage, she couldn't exactly do what the Moonlight Boy does and teleport herself onto the branches of the World Tree. Even Sonia, whose astral perception and connection is on par with Shirke's, needs Griffith's powers to traverse those branches, and she doesn't even know what a luminous body is. A long time has passed since Shirke entered those branches, so much so that her elf companion Ivalira is worried that she'll never wake up. But we've seen her twice after she entered the astral world's dragon path, something that impressed even the evil sorcerer Daiba, by the way. The first time we saw her was when she pulled Guts out of his own misery right before Rakshas attacked the Kushan capital, and the second time was when Farnese erected the formation of the Four Kings in the Kushan capital. That second time was probably just to check in on her apprentice and gauge whether she could pull off something as important as being the witch in charge of the situation, because the Elfhelm mages they rescued were practically practically useless at that point. But when she was assured of the fact that Farnace had things under control, she went back into the World Tree's branches and reached Falconia in an instant. We have to assume that all the time Shirke didn't return to her body was spent mapping the dragon path and figuring out how to get to Casca. This won't make sense if you think of time the way regular people do, because even a month wouldn't be enough to map out a portion of the dragon path, let alone its entirety. But time works differently in the astral world, so it's possible that Shirke has already spent months roaming the World Tree's branches. We just don't know about it. Her final piece of dialogue, as of now, was something along the lines of, "Don't worry, Miss Casca, I'll find you and I'll save you," and now that she's at the gates of Falconia, she can actually do that. Casca's jailbreak might just serve as the trigger point for the final battle, because there's a reason Griffith took her back home with him at the great risk of exposing his real nature. He needs her under his control so he can prevent becoming vulnerable every time he turns into the Moonlight Boy on nights of the full moon. And if you guys noticed the prophecy that heralded the arrival of the seahorse on Kushan shores, it refers to the moon in its crescent stage, which means that time is coming sooner rather than later for Griffith. Right now, Casca's under a spell that's making her question what's real and what isn't, because she thinks she's a Falconian noblewoman, but she has flashes of her real life and journey whenever she's close to water. Shirke's luminous body contacting her would break that trance completely, and moreover, there's also a prophecy that says she will reunite with Sonia before everything is said and done. This reunion will expose Griffith's true nature to the seer that loves him so much she's willing to get in the middle of him and his queen-to-be, and when that happens, Sonia should be able to facilitate Casca's escape. The transformation into the Moonlight Boy isn't a temporary problem for Griffith. As long as the demon child remains fused into his vessel, he'll keep transforming, so he'll need Casca back. And that's when we think the final battle will begin. During that battle, Shirke's unique set of skills and her vast wealth of knowledge, as well as her innate talent for the arcane arts, should become a crucial factor in winning it, because if we haven't established that throughout this video, we haven't been doing our jobs right. Most likely, she'll be the one to come up with a spell that allows Skull Knight to use the Sword of Actuation without God Hand interference and ensure that once they're banished to the Abyss, they stay there. Also, her ability to release the souls of dead people should make the afterlife a lot more balanced instead of having souls being sent to hell en masse because people think Griffith is their savior. So when everything is said and done, this little girl, who's barely 12 years old, will prove to be the key to winning the final battle of Berserk, but that's just our opinion. Conclusion. What do you guys think? Will Shirke solve the God Hand problem with a little help from her meddlesome gang? Or will she overestimate herself like she did when she thought the Moonlight Boy was an avatar of Danon, aka the Flower Storm Monarch? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more Berserk content. We'll see you guys soon with another video, so until then, stay safe, and remember to keep What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and Al Ewing is giving us our first look at the Gold Lantern in DC Comics, in the Absolute Universe. And here's the crazy thing. This story is going to do more to unite the Absolute Universe, connecting all these different dots, than any story before it. So Superman, Batman, Martian Manhunter, it's all getting pulled together. So what this does is this picks up with issue number 5. Specifically, it goes back to when Sojourner Merlin first became the Green Lantern from touching Abin Sur. And when that happened, Hal Jordan here, who of course is a little more panicky than we're traditionally used to, right, a little more on edge, of course has a gun in his possession and immediately draws it on Abin Sur. And Abin Sur says she has power without understanding. She is anomaly. And Hal asks the question, right, what does that mean? And Abin Sur says anomalies cannot exist in the spectrum of light. She will be sought, hunted. Be with fear, Hal Jordan. Now, that's the thing to keep in mind here, is whenever Abin Sur says a thing, what we seem to have gotten so far is that it's always the inverse, right? Be without fear, do not be afraid. Be with fear, be afraid. Fear for your friend's safety. Now, all these things are going to become important here in a little while once we actually explain how the spectrum of light works. But Hal Jordan, in this moment of panic, ends up shooting and killing Abin Sur. But in the moment before Abin Sur dies, he reaches out to Hal Jordan and grabs him, and he says, "Judgment. Judgment, Hal Jordan, the Black Hand." And that is how Hal Jordan ended up getting the Black Hand in the first place. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, when Hal Jordan becomes the Black Hand, for lack of a better word, right, the gun literally being transformed into seemingly the thing that infects him, he seems to have all the same abilities that a Green Lantern would traditionally have. And so people have been trying to reconcile, right, the Black Lantern Corps versus the Red Lantern Corps, like how does all that stuff work? And Hal Jordan asked the question, right, what did you do? And that's when Abin Sur says, judgment. Judgment is no longer in progress, and Abin Sur cannot now be appointed. And how far out? How far out is the world that's coming? Be with fear, Hal Jordan. Fear the Black Hand, and fear the Black Star. And so that's the crazy thing, because at that point, Abin Sur essentially dies. And so what it does is it jumps back to this current moment in the fight between Hal Jordan and Sojourner Merlin. So basically the Green Lantern versus what appeared to be the combination of the Black and the Red Lantern. Now, the Red Lantern aspect only really seemed to come by way of personality, because historically speaking in DC Comics, Red Lanterns represent rage. Most all of you guys who read Green Lantern know that. And so Hal Jordan, in this moment of freaking out, right, so full of anger and so full of rage, when he had revealed to Sojourner that he had killed Abin Sur, she seemingly flipped, because any answers that they could have gotten now based on everything that's going on are gone. There's no chance to get them. So many people within the city had basically been believed to have been killed. John Stewart was yanked into the Green Lantern, so there's no way to get answers from him, even though he was the one that was seemingly able to figure out the weakness of it being the color yellow or anything made of gold. There's no Guy Gardner here at the moment. He was seemingly killed. Kyle Rayner was referenced, so there really isn't any information coming from anybody. And that's where Hal tries to justify, right? I thought he'd killed you, Joe. The cafe fell down around us. Todd was dead under the rubble. I saw a flash of green light, and then you were gone. What could I think? That's why I pulled the trigger. And that's why all of this is happening. So what happened to you, Joe? And she just says this, and then immediately goes on the attack against Hal Jordan and is like, the Green Lantern happened. Now, one of the things that I hope you guys are starting to pick up on from both of these guys, which is kind of interesting here, is they're both demonstrating some measure of uncontrollability, right, on an emotional side. That despite how well she seems composed, Sojourner feels like she's full of rage, right? She's full of confusion. She doesn't understand what's going on. Hal Jordan's emotions are pretty straightforward here. And Sojourner says, it fell out of the sky and everything in me was screaming to get out before it hit. The next thing I know, I'm in the desert, no idea where, what direction I traveled in, until I felt a pull like a compass needle towards you. And that's where Hal says no towards the Black Hand, because it was getting stronger and it was taking control and killing people because of her, because of you. So this thing, this power he has, is partially speaking through him. And he says, you brought the Green Lantern down. You destroyed Evergreen. You stole the power of the Abensur. You are anomaly, Sojourner Merlane. And that's where Sojourner starts to pick up on what's happening. And she asks the question, who's talking, Hal? Because you're not the one talking. Someone else is talking through you. Who is talking? And that's where he just continues on without even answering, right? It was you and the ring. Take off the ring, Sojourner Merlane. Take off the ring. And that's where she's just kind of like, what? Because now it's this heightened state of confusion. She doesn't know who's talking through Hal. Hal's probably not even in control of himself anymore. They keep talking about taking off the ring, and she doesn't know if taking the ring off is a good thing or a bad thing. Is she being given instructions to save her life, or is she being given instructions to weaken her in order to kill her? There's no way that she could possibly know. And so all she does is just take the risk, right? Having power is better than having no power in the face of something like this. And so she just says, make me. And she blasts this thing with as much power as she possibly can and then races off. And while Hal Jordan follows her as best he can, at that point you switch over to Hector Hammond, who's kind of watching everything unfold. Now, Hector Hammond in the Absolute Universe is very different from the one that we're used to in the main DC universe, physically more than anything else, right? The guy's not a giant head attached to a tiny body, but he's still every bit nefarious as he's always been. He's exceedingly rich, and one of the things we're going to find out here in a second is he's well aware of who Ra's al Ghul is in the Absolute Superman universe. But in the fight between Sojourner and Hal Jordan, they're basically pulled, if not potentially guided, back towards the Green Lantern. And when that happens, they're all snatched inside. And the one person that's just sitting there waiting for them is Golden John Stewart, the Gold Lantern. And he says, Sojourner Merlane, Hal Jordan, be without fear. And so that's where he goes into this exposition. And that's where we start getting answers about what's happening here. Because the question's asked, how far out is the world that's coming? And that's when you jump to Agent Chase. And that's a crazy thing. Cameron Chase, for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with DC Comics, she's basically part of a supernatural investigative team in the main DC universe. And so her job is to go out there and investigate paranormal things. And all that kind of falls under Amanda Waller, or at least it did at one point in time, because Amanda Waller basically oversaw everything in terms of how the federal government monitored and managed metahuman affairs, right? Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Swamp Thing, John Constantine, all those things kind of fell under the purview of Amanda Waller. And Cameron Chase was just one part of that much larger equation. But in the Absolute Universe, things are still the same, but a little bit different at the same time. And so when Cameron Chase is brought into this office of her superior, we're actually going to find out she's kind of the link that brings Batman, Superman, and all those different guys together. That's why this conversation is so important. Because initially they talk about her caseload, right? She says, you pulled me off Nevada and California. That leaves what? Oregon? And what's in Oregon? She says, Oregon's squared away by Tuesday. Monday? Lunch. And she says, what do I do the rest of the week? Count ceiling tiles? I told you I'm not going to transfer east. And of course her boss is like, you absolutely can't smoke in here. And so she's like, whatever. And she asks, is this about Evergreen? And he says, it's not entirely about Evergreen. And she says, so it is about Evergreen. Just say it, right? And he says, the Evergreen situation does potentially cover the relevant states. And so then she asks, California, the entire state of California? And he says, it's close enough to the border that presumably it would involve California. And that's why he kind of continues on. You know why this is. You know why I cannot put you on Evergreen. You can't even go near it. Every regulation says that. And I'm doing you a favor here, right? I'm helping you, and you see that, right? Like, tell me that you see my side. And so she asks, so did Hector Hammond buy you a beach house or what? And then she just put on administrative leave. And so we're going to circle back around to her here in a minute, because again, she's going to become important. But that's when you get this explanation from John Stewart, because John says, all of this is Oa. Don't panic. Don't be afraid. I'm going to work to translate these concepts as best I can. Try to understand. And he says, the Abensur is the judge of worlds. A community is a world in miniature. So a testing ground was chosen and contained, and judgment began. On the ground, evaluation is only the first stage. The second stage is transport into the Green Lantern, and throughout it, into the presence
of Oa. And he says, but Owens don't think like we do. They do not have the perspective we do. People were afraid. People died. But not everyone. And that's when you see Guy Gardner. And so that's where Sojourner is just kind of like, okay, you're alive. Like everyone here in the town is alive. Like we all thought they were dead. And the response of John, we're all alive, Joe. Let yourself know it. Let yourself understand it. We're all together here in the place of understanding, and we are all without fear. And that's the crazy thing, because in turn, Hal Jordan says, fear is all I can feel. It's the hand. The hand does not like to be here. And Guy Gardner chimes in, there are 4 levels of light. Chord is the lowest, then Rao, then Sir, then R. Chaotic action, restraint from action, correct action, total understanding, enlightenment. Now, this is an important thing here, because what is Rao? I mean, if you guys are familiar with the Superman mythos, you guys know Rao is the god of the Kryptonians. And so there's a lot of theories out there that at some point along the line, the Kryptonians were visited. Right, they were visited by an Abin Sur, and so they in turn took this concept of restrained action and kind of adopted it as a sort of deity, and that in some capacity they were corrupted by it. Because lest we forget, within the absolute universe, the Kryptonian higher class, right, the upper class, were essentially going to leave all the citizens, the regular people of Krypton, to die when the planet exploded. But one of the things to keep in mind here is that the only knowledge we have of how everything unfolded on the planet Krypton is from the perspective of Superman, who was little less than a teenager at the time that it all happened. So we basically have a young child's perspective of the ending of his world. That simply means we don't actually know what really happened and if he saw it as it actually happened. Those are a lot of the questions that we still have to have answered. And so in response to everything that Guy Gardner is saying, the responses to Sojourner Mullane, that does not make me want to panic any less, John. Is Guy okay in there, right? Like, what is this place? What's the Green Lantern? What is Oa? What was Abin Sur judging us for? And the response of John, the Abin means the adept, the controller, the guardian. The Abin Sur was a guardian at the green level of light. The task of an Abin Sur is to select Ains, initiates into light for what's coming. Guy showed restraint, so he was judged as deserving of the red flame. And that's the crazy thing, is red flame is restraint. It's not rage. And that's where Hal asked the question, what about me? Did I deserve this? Talking in my head, telling me every dark thought I have is right. Why would he do that to me? What good is that? Right? I try so hard to control it, to stop it. And Guy Gardner responds, every flame can be controlled, but you must have understanding to command the flame. Total understanding. Control of the flame without understanding is Tomar. Anomaly. And that's where Sojourner's just like, now I know there's something wrong with you guys, right? Something wrong in your heads. Acting like this is just some big lesson to learn instead of a bomb strapped to our friend, a bomb that keeps going off. And for what? Right? Hal's right. Why did Abin Sur do it? And the response of John, that I don't know. And we cannot ask because he's dead. Chaotic action. All I can tell you is what I've seen and what I've learned, what's coming for us. And he says, I've only scratched the surface, but I was chosen because I sought knowledge, Joe, selected for the gold flame. Ain R. R is the highest level. Chord, the lowest. But see, that's the Owen perspective. There are others that look in the opposite direction, who see Oa as incorrect. They take power from the dark, power without restraint. The Abin Chord, the Weaponers, the Black Stars. How far out is the world that's coming, Joe? How far out is the world of chaos? How far out is the Black Star world? How far out is Mogo? Which is crazy, because in the main DC universe, Mogo, as most of you guys know, is a Green Lantern planet. And the idea that Mogo is home to basically those individuals who choose to embrace the darkness, who choose to embrace what you and I would consider to be chaotic power, is kind of nuts. I don't know that I would use simplistic terms like evil versus good or anything like that, but the fact that he's not part of a peacekeeping force is kind of nuts, because when Hal Jordan sees it, he says, that's it, right? That's the thing in my head. It's the size of a planet, and it's in my head. And that's where Guy says, enemies fear the face of steel. And Sojourner's just like, screw this, right? She's like, I'm the Tomar or whatever, right? I'm the anomaly. All Abensur's power, none of his knowledge. I don't know what the rules are, not like you, John, but if I don't know the rules, then I'll have to stick to them. And if Abensur put this crap into you, Hal, then I'm betting I can get it out. Give me your hand. And that's where Hal's just like, no, right? It wants to kill you, so I don't want you to die. And she just says, right? It's the darkness. It wants to eat the light. But you heard what John said. It's all one thing. We're all one thing. You're just at the lowest level. And that's all, right? You're not some entity out there separate from all of this. And so she says, somebody's got to help you up. Give me your hand. And when Hal Jordan does that, she removes all that black impurity from him, right? Like there is no more black hand at that point. And Hal just goes back to seemingly his normal self. And so she's like, let's get out of here, right? And they immediately jump out of the Green Lantern. Now, of course, when that happens, all that just black ooze comes pouring out of this thing. And in turn, like the Green Lantern just disappears, but not before Hector Hammond tries to get his guys to either follow Sojourner Merlane or analyze what's going on here. Now, here's where things start getting tied together into the larger absolute universe, because while all of this is being watched and Hector Hammond is told that they can't follow Sojourner Merlane, she's just going too fast, right? She flew out of range. And so he says, okay, right? Like, everyone shut up and let me think. He's like, no one's got it, right? Not us, but not Ra's al Ghul, right? We've got what it left us, the black ooze and all that data. So at least it's a win. We have at least something, right? So one of the things that this kind of demonstrates, and one of the things that we always kind of knew, is that seemingly among these various evil individuals who are running the world, Ra's al Ghul, Hector Hammond, probably Absolute Joker, that there's a kind of space race, for lack of a better word, for meta-human powers, right? The same thing's happening in Absolute Flash, right? It's just all these things where they're trying to attain extreme levels of power, that metahumans are weapons to be used, to be collected, as opposed to protectors of the world. And so out on the moon, right, which is where the Green Lantern teleported to, you just kind of have John Stewart sitting there, where he asks the question, right, how far out is the world that's coming? And he says, closer every day. And then he just tells Sojourner, come back soon. And so at that point, you switch back to Cameron. And this is the part that I told you was super cool. So what goes on is she calls her partner, who turns out to be Simon Baz. So at this point right now, right, we have Kyle Rayner, who's been referenced, so we know he exists. We have Guy Gardner, who's currently within the Green Lantern, learning the powers of the Red Flame, right? The power of restraint. We've got John Stewart. We've got Hal Jordan. The only Earthbound Green Lantern that we're missing is Jessica Cruz. And I imagine it's only a matter of time before she comes in. And so one of the things that happens is you find out that they're essentially partners, right? Simon Baz and Cameron Chase are partners here. And that's where it all kind of starts getting pulled together. Because she asked the question, right? Like, I'm your partner. Who are you even working Evergreen with? And don't tell me they put Pemberton on it. You know, he says, oh, it's not Pemberton, right? You know the rules, Cam. You're emotionally involved. And that's when you find out that Cameron Chase's ex-wife is Sojourner Merlane. That's why her superior wouldn't send her out there. Because she can't be impartial. She can't be devoid and separate of everything that's going on. And what's crazy about this is Cameron doesn't know the Sojourner's there, right? She says she wasn't there anyway, right? She told me that she never wanted to go back, unless that was a lie too. And that's where Simon's like, see, emotionally involved. You can't do it. And so he tells her, I mean, you could always take the transfer, right? You know, career-wise, it would be a phenomenal idea. And so that's where she's like, Gateway's here, right? Evergreen's here. It's all here. What's out east? The Gotham thing? Some guy, right? She's like, I'm Coast City, born and raised. I'm not leaving this town until I find out what's going on. And that's a crazy thing, right? Because now we're starting to see these parts being pulled together. We're starting to see the absolute universe being yanked together, as opposed to just Batman here, Superman there, Wonder Woman there. It's a slow build, and they pick the best guys to do it, right? Dennis Camp, Al Ewing, Jason Aaron. These are the best guys to use to start pulling worlds together, telling these slow build stories that unify everything. And here's the craziness. In the midst of all of this, Cameron gets a knock at her door while she's talking to Simon, and she just kind of starts going on a bit of a tear about Sojourner, right? Like, I thought that I was done with her, right? She's a locked box of secrets, and I was done. And she says, God, Simon, how many times can Sojourner Mullane screw up my life? Only for her to find out the person at the door is Sojourner with Hal Jordan. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Absolute Green Lantern is so good. The Absolute Universe, man, it's incredible. I'll tell you guys this, man. You put a pen in the hand of Al Ewing, and he's going to write you one of the best comic books you've ever read in your entire life. This guy's phenomenal. Anyway, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
You know, this is one of those weeks where I wish I had a healing factor. So just as a little disclaimer, my speech might be a little slurred because, you know, the good stuff is kicking in, but we're gonna push through this thing. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, we get caught up with Magik, Jean, and Wolverine. But starting with Magik, the last time we saw her was in issue 12, when Logan went to free Jean from the Cerebellum, and Magik came through with her brother Colossus to try and stop him, only for Jean to get herself together just enough to the point where as the Phoenix she made Colossus a non-issue going forward, like he's cooked, pun intended. But after doing this, Jean allowed Magik to get away, cause she literally told her, go, flee child. And that's what Magik did. She escaped the limbo and she hasn't been seen since. And before we go any further, I want you guys to keep in mind, when this happened, Magik had taken a series of L's going into this. And at that time, leading up to the Maker's return, I doubt she wanted the Maker to come back and see her holding all these L's. Because not too long before, she was tricked and double-crossed by Emmanuel DaCosta in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, and that's in addition to her being defeated by both Miles Morales and Maystorm. And aside from that, we learned in Ultimate Endgame issue 1 that most of the members of the Maker's Council, they've spread out as far away from the city as they could get. So I imagine all these things contributed towards Magik's decision to flee to Limbo and not come back for some time. Though when she left, she did say that this isn't over. So she's not done, but she hasn't been back since. But what we end up doing now is taking a look back 25 years ago and hearing the story of her childhood, which looks very similar to 616 Illyana, but it also lines up with what we saw in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, when Emmanuel DaCosta revealed Illyana's greatest fears. But this picks up with her saying here, ever since I was a child, I have believed in monsters. My father told of his monsters often, greedy, powerful, dangerous men from the cities. But I never feared men. I feared one man, one monster alone, the Inside Man. He would watch me silently from the darkness. I told my father, of course. But father told me I was imagining things, but I wasn't, because one day he opened that door and I heard his voice for the first time in my head. He called me by my name and he called himself a friend. And that voice told me He had come to bring me home. I found myself in a strange, desolate place, unlike any I'd ever seen or imagined. He continued to speak to me. He told me to follow his voice. Despite my fear, despite how alone and cold and confused I felt, I could not help but to follow. I wanted to run. I did. I wanted to call for my brother's help. But then, he welcomed me. He welcomed me to my destiny, grand and glorious as he put it. And then he welcomed me to his paradise. And I gotta say, anytime we talk about Magic's story and her history with Belasco, it just has me like, yeah, lock him up. But much like before, we're not shown too much about Magic's history, but just know at this time, with Arcady and Colossus dead and Magic missing, the people of the Eurasian Republic are heavily inspired by the sacrifices made by the opposition. They're tired of dictators and they're rising up. And that's where things are currently at. When we go back to Wolverine, Phoenix, and Sentinel-1, with them laying low underground while the people up top are marching. And even now, with Wolverine just taking a peek up there, as he comes back down, you're hearing people up there getting shot in the leg. It's crazy. But nonetheless, they're still fighting. And in a way, it kind of seems like a parallel to a lot of what we've seen from the heroes of Earth 6160, especially in this very moment in Ultimate Wolverine. And even now, Sentinel-1, or David Howler, he tells Logan like, hey, we can help them. Only for Logan to tell him like, yeah, that's gonna be tricky. Or that's gonna put them in a tricky spot. Because he tells him, we get involved in this, then we gotta take responsibility. And where does that end? Do we set up a new government to our liking? Become the new leaders that they'll grow to hate? We ain't Mikhail with grand schemes and motives. This is up to them, the people. They gotta figure this one out. It ain't going to be up to us. We did our part, we set the pieces in motion. And it makes sense. But in the here and now, when it comes to Jean Grey, she's not doing too well. And these guys ain't giving up on her. Cause like Director Prestovic mentioned in her notes, Jean had been held so long in the cerebellum to where it had given her muscle atrophy to the point to where her body was considered useless. And because of that, to an extent, they weren't really worried about her escaping because they knew she wouldn't last long. But at the same time, the director wanted to keep Jean intact. Unlike some other people, like Dr. Lysenko, who basically wanted to cut Jean up and keep what he found useful. And you know, the more he kept talking, at one point I was like, okay, I'm sure this is the guy who was like, hey, now hear me out. Let's take Cyclops' head and put it in the stomach of a Sentinel. Like, this guy had a thing for cutting up mutants and repurposing their parts. And so to be honest, I'm glad he's out of here. Because if he wasn't, they need to be working on putting him behind bars. Because something wasn't right with that man. So I'm glad him and Wolverine got to play a bit of rock, paper, adamantium claws with a sprinkle of open chest. But in the here and now, when Wolverine asks Sentinel-1 how Jean's doing, he tells her she needs medicine. Her body is failing and the infection is spreading. And all they really have for her right now is like an IV. And there's a moment here where Jean just screams out, "Mother, why didn't you?" before she passes out again. So I imagine she's having dreams about her life before Xavier, with something pertaining to her mother Elaine, her older sister, or the death of her friend. Like, we just don't know how close her history is to 616 Jean. But this outburst is really short and she passes right back out. But during this time, Sentinel-1 taps her IV and he's like, "We're gonna need more." And he tells Logan that they can help her, but they're gonna need medicine from above. So that's where Logan's like, all right, I can head east along the sewer line and try to find a less dicey spot to go above. Just tell me what she needs. Which in a way kind of feels like Wolverine's being sent on a side mission, because as he makes his way, you kind of get this feeling where it's like, I know this dude ain't finna go get these supplies and come back and have no kind of problem in between. And surely enough, he sniffs out some trouble, because this is where he runs into Ursa Major, who is also a part of Directorate X. And you can tell this dude just finished munching on somebody down here, because he's covered in blood and he's looking at Wolverine like he's a snack. And he's not having it. So this quickly turns into a kill or be killed situation. And I can just imagine, since Director Prestovic had used Xavier's brain for the bomb and now Jean's escaped, I can just imagine that there's nothing keeping any of their other projects or other specimens under control outside of the pre-established XS units. And who knows how long those are going to hold up. But even in this bloodbath of an encounter, Logan feels a great deal of sympathy for Ursa Major, because he knows what it's like firsthand to have Director Prestovic in his head and not have his mind be his own. But that doesn't mean he's about to let this dude Leonardo DiCaprio him down here. So Logan makes it clear, like, hey, I feel bad for what they did. I know what it's like, but if I gotta put you down, then I'm gonna do what I gotta do. Which still leads to Logan getting smacked around, which has Logan like, hey, this ain't the way it's supposed to go. Spoken like any person who's losing a fight. And I'm not even mad at it, because it's not like he's dealing with the lightweight here. Because not only is Ursa Major insanely strong, but dude can fight, and he's smarter than the average bear. So again, I would expect for Logan to take a bit of a beating throughout this. Like, it's not going to be a walk in the park. But eventually there comes a point where Logan's like, all right, that's enough. And he gets to slicing. Because he didn't even want this fight to begin with. He just wasn't given the option to walk away. And after cutting his arm off, Logan gives him a warning. He's like, hey, had enough? And Logan asks him, like, you got any sense left in that skull, or did they take that too? And Ursa gives him the finger. And I ain't gonna front, when I saw that, I was like, bro, you mean to tell me using your right mind this whole time? Because that's kind of what this seems like. And no, I'm not saying that's the case at all, but that's the sort of gesture that lets Logan know that Buddy here wants some more. And that's why Logan's like, oh, you like to bleed, huh? So Logan just slides right in and hits him in the honey pot. And from there, Logan is no longer holding back. Because up until now, he was dishing blows that Ursa could take. Because Logan's like, hey, dude's not in his right mind. I'm not going to try and go ham or nothing. Like, we could scrap, but I'm not going to turn all the way up. Like, that wouldn't be right. But then dude gave him the finger. And now his brains is leaking through the roof of his mouth. And from there, Logan just keeps going. And going. And going. And for Logan, it's not really any malice here. It's more of a mercy kill. Because when he's done, he just tells Ursa, nightmare's over, bub. Forever. Like saying, now you can rest. In peace. And after this, Logan keeps it moving. Because again, he's still going to make this supply run for Jean. And when he comes out from underground, he does make his way to an area that's not as busy as where they were before, though still the place is trashed and there's graffiti everywhere. But first things first, then Logan needs to make sure and get the supplies for Jean. So he breaks into a nearby pharmacy and he handles that. But just after getting the supplies that Sentinel-1 told him to grab, Logan sees a bunch of pictures on the wall, just taped to the wall outside the pharmacy, with the words written over their faces, "Bring them home, Ilyana Rasputin." And I imagine these are just some of the people whom Magic had taken to limbo, like she had threatened others she would do before, like Director Prostovic, who took a little field trip, and perhaps some of these could be mutants who were taken as well. But either way, after the uprising, the people are like, hey, enough's enough, bring them home. But nonetheless, after Logan sees this, he quickly makes his way back underground and back to Jean. But yeah, that'll do it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like. And after this, we get into the search for Ilyana, which I imagine will take us much deeper into her backstory as well. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.
Man, sit down. That big ass bear boy came up, man. Yeah, Logan allowed him to wear him out a little bit, but we knew damn hell Wolverine who ended up getting the better of him though. We knew Wolverine ended up getting the better of him. Whooped his ass too. And like you said, it was like more so like a mercy kill. Basically, you know, he took him out with honor. Especially because, you know, hell, he flipped them off. If he would have walked away, would have had a problem. But the bear chose to be an asshole. Oh shit. The Wolverine took his ass out. It was slicing him up, boy. Oh shit, absolute Wolverine ain't no joke. But yeah, but let's go to this next video real quick. But yeah, but y'all tell me, man, how y'all like that one. You know, I think that one was decent. Shout out to brother Dope Spill Comics. Yeah, shout out to that brother because yeah, that was my first time, man, seeing the videos and shit. So especially that one. This will be my first time seeing this one. I'm checking this one out with you guys. So I'm a big deep fan of this franchise right here. All right, I ain't gonna say the name. I'm gonna just, you know, play and let you guys see. You know, this franchise means close, you know, dear to heart to me. So it's a representation of manhood, brotherhood, man mode. You know what I mean? And and a lot of examples of masculinity. So yeah, and a whole bunch of other shit. But and I wouldn't mind if they came out with, I don't know, if a sequel or like adaptation spin-off. I'll be on it. If they ever did, I'll be on it quick. So, but yeah, but let's check this out. Here we go. Yeah, and also give me your thoughts too in the comments, in the comment section about this one.
It's rare for a story to stick with people for over 2 decades, but Full Metal Alchemist did just that and more, because what began as a manga in 2001 turned into something bigger, a cultural touchstone in the anime world. Today, it's streaming on major platforms, inspiring new adaptations, and also making room for fresh stories from Hiromu Arakawa, its creator. Whether you're a longtime fan of Full Metal Alchemist or just discovering it, there's no better time to revisit its legacy and look ahead to what's next. We're ready to get into it, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we do have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origins, manga, and early success. Before it was 2 different anime with 2 different endings, Full Metal Alchemist began as a manga by Hiromu Arakawa, which was first published in Monthly Shonen Gangan in July 2001. It tells the story of 2 brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric, who commit a terrible mistake and spend the rest of the series trying to fix it. What started as a gripping, emotionally layered manga quickly turned into a massive cultural phenomenon. In a world where alchemy is real and practiced science, the Elric brothers try to bring their mother back to life using forbidden transmutation as the primary premise, but they had to pay a price. That's the thing about alchemy, is that there has to be an exchange. Ed lost his arm and a leg, but Al lost his entire body, and Ed manages to bind his soul to a suit of armor. From that moment on, their goal is to recover what they've lost. The only way to do that was to find the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary alchemical artifact with the power to override the law of equivalent exchange. What made Full Metal Alchemist stand out from the start was how fully realized the world was. Amestris, the country they live in, is a militaristic state with deep political corruption, civil war in its recent past, and hidden secrets underneath its structured laws. Ed and Al were navigating a world where power was always tied to sacrifice, where every shortcut came at a cost, and where the truth behind the Philosopher's Stone was more horrifying than they ever imagined. Arakawa's world building was meticulous. She combined early 20th century European aesthetics with steampunk elements and layered political commentary, and she never lost sight of her characters, because no matter how big the world became, the story always came back to Ed and Al's bond, their guilt, and their hope. Every decision they made was driven by the love they had for each other and the weight of what they had done. The manga was a commercial as well as critical success. The series sold millions of copies worldwide and consistently ranked among the top-selling titles in Japan as it progressed through the 2000s. Arakawa's artwork also transformed significantly over the course of the series, where early chapters had a more comedic, lighthearted tone, but the stakes obviously rose with the intensity and detail in her art. At the time of its conclusion in 2010, the manga had run for nearly a decade, totaling 27 volumes. It was widely regarded as one of the best-written shonen stories of its era, standing alongside giants like Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach, but with a distinct tone and structure that helped it appeal to a broader audience. It had a clear beginning, middle, and end, instead of depending on filler arcs. It wrapped up all of its themes like grief, redemption, humanity, and sacrifice in a satisfying and meaningful way. This strong foundation was part of why Full Metal Alchemist went on to get 2 anime adaptations, both of which would take very different approaches to telling the Elric brothers' story. But before we even start the debate over which version was better or more true to the source material, there was just the manga, which had a focused, character-driven, and tightly plotted story that earned its reputation through sheer narrative strength. It's rare for a series to strike a balance between action, philosophy, and emotional storytelling so effectively, and even rarer for one to do it while delivering a complete, cohesive arc from start to finish. That's the legacy Arakawa set in motion when Full Metal Alchemist first hit the page. The first anime, 2003 Manga Divergence. The first Full Metal Alchemist anime aired back in October 2003, made by Studio Bones. At the time, the manga by Hiromu Arakawa had just started picking up steam, and it was nowhere near finished. So, while the show started off pretty faithful, it eventually had to take its own route. Around the halfway point, the anime caught up to the manga, and from there, with Arakawa's okay, the studio came up with its own original storyline and ending. Up until episode 25, it stuck closely to the source material. You still had the heartbreaking Nina Tucker arc, the Ishval flashbacks, Scar's introduction. Those early storylines were all in there. Ed and Al set off on their journey to find the Philosopher's Stone to get their bodies back, and along the way, they ran into heavy moral choices and started to really understand the price of alchemy. The story began to shift once the anime passed the available manga content. Instead of the manga's long-term antagonist, Father, the anime introduced Dante, a new character written specifically for this version. Dante was once Hohenheim's partner. After learning the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, she began transferring her soul into new bodies to escape death. She also manipulated events from the shadows, using the homunculi and the military to maintain control in order to keep herself alive. The homunculi were rewritten too. In the manga, they are fragments of Father's plan, tied to his attempt to recreate God. In the 2003 anime, they are the failed results of human transmutation, each one created when someone tried to resurrect a loved one. For example, Lust in the anime is the failed transmutation of Scar's brother's lover. Wrath is Izumi's lost son. These versions gave the homunculi more emotional weight, but also detached them from the wider conspiracy that Arakawa was building in the manga. Mid to late episodes changed the trajectory of the story. The anime moved towards a conclusion centered on Dante's manipulation and the consequences of using Philosopher's Stones instead of following the slow unraveling of Father's plans. Characters were also written in new directions. For example, Mustang's arc in the anime focuses less on political reform and more on his personal losses. The anime version of Scar also plays a different role, sacrificing himself to create a Philosopher's Stone and triggering major changes to the timeline. By the final episodes, the story becomes more introspective. Edward uncovers the truth about Dante's identity and her control over the homunculi. He's killed by envy when he tries to stop her. Al, in an act of desperation, sacrifices himself to bring Ed back. This causes Edward to be pulled through the gate of truth and dropped into our real-world 1920s Germany, where he wakes up in the middle of post-World War I Europe. In return, Al is restored to his human body with no memory of their journey. The anime ends with the brothers split across different worlds. Al is back in Amestris while Ed is trapped in Germany. Neither of them knows how to reach the other. The final scene shows Ed boarding a train, determined to find a way back home. It's deliberately an unresolved ending, setting up the 2005 film Conqueror of Shambhala, which acts as a conclusion to this timeline. The 2003 anime was praised for its emotional depth, but the divergence confused many fans. With a different villain, altered character arcs, and a completely original ending, it had left the audience wondering how much of it matched Arakawa's original intent. A second adaptation became inevitable when the manga later continued on a very different path. Brotherhood and manga finale, giving the fans closure. By the time Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood aired in 2009, the manga was almost completed. Unlike the 2003 anime, Brotherhood set out to adapt Hiromu Arakawa's original story from start to finish. With 64 episodes, it followed the manga's exact structure and tone, which was character-driven, focused, and carefully paced. It corrected the timeline divergence of the earlier adaptation and gave fans the ending they had been waiting for. The core premise remained the same. Edward and Alphonse Elric continued their search for the Philosopher's Stone in order to revert their bodies as a result of a failed transmutation. But in Brotherhood, the larger mystery was the truth about the stone, the homunculi, and the military, which slowly unfolded into a much broader conspiracy involving the entire nation of Amestris. Instead of Dante, the villain this time was Father, an immortal being who had once been a homunculus created from a flask. Having escaped from Xerxes centuries ago, he aimed to achieve godhood by absorbing the power of truth, using the entire population of Amestris as a sacrifice. To do this, he created the homunculi as extensions of himself. Each was named after a deadly sin. As the story progressed, every major character got a complete arc. Roy Mustang pursued justice for the Ishvalan genocide and lost his eyesight after being forced to open the Gate of Truth. Scar, once a violent extremist, ended up helping bring down the corrupt regime. Ling Yao, a prince from Xing, sought immortality and ended up hosting greed. The homunculi were revealed to be deeply connected to Father's plan, and one by one they fell. The final battle began during the Promised Day, which was a massive coordinated attack across the country. The military turned against King Bradley. The citizens rose up, and deep beneath beneath Central, the main characters faced Father, who was now in possession of godlike power after absorbing the souls of Amestris. One by one, his plans unraveled as this power could not be sustained. Alphonse was severely injured in the fight. In the final moments, Edward had a choice of sacrificing something of great personal value at the Gate of Truth to bring his brother back. He chose to give up his ability to perform alchemy. That exchange returned Alphonse's body and soul fully restored. Ed lost his alchemy forever, but finally kept the promise he had made at the start of the story. With Father defeated and the Philosopher's Stone destroyed, the story moved into its epilogue. Roy Mustang began work on reforming the military, Ling returned to Xing with Greed's memories, planning to unify his people, and the Elric brothers went home. 2 years later, Edward left on a journey to learn more about the world without alchemy. Alphonse followed his own path of study. They were ready to go in different directions in the last scene, however, there was a mutual awareness that they were going to live and eventually meet again. The series ended with a full resolution. Characters lived with their choices and arcs came to a close. The long-running question of whether the brothers could restore what was lost was answered with clarity. Brotherhood delivered what many anime adaptations don't, which is a complete and faithful retelling of a manga with a solid earned conclusion. Where the 2003 anime leaned into ambiguity and tragedy, Brotherhood stayed aligned with Arakawa's intent, which focused on sacrificing growth. For fans who followed the story from the beginning, Brotherhood gave them closure that the first anime couldn't. The 2003 ending, unresolved fates, and movie closure. The 2003 Full Metal Alchemist anime ended in a way that surprised many viewers. The final episodes pushed the Elric brothers into new physical and emotional territory. It had to find its own conclusion, with the series diverging from the manga in its second half. In the final episodes, Edward learns the truth about Dante, the true identity behind the homunculi, and the nature of the Philosopher's Stone. Scar sacrifices himself to create the stone, using the lives of the Ishvalan people. Alphonse becomes its vessel. Ed is killed by envy in a moment of desperation, but Al responds by using the stone's power to bring his brother back. That act erases Al completely, and he disappears from existence. When Ed is revived, he immediately performs another alchemic transmutation. This time, he offers his own life in exchange for Alphonse's body and soul. As a result, Ed is sent beyond the Gate of Truth and wakes up in an alternate version of Earth, specifically 1920s Germany, right after World War I. Meanwhile, back in Amestris, Al has been restored to his 10-year-old self with no memory of anything that happened. The brothers are now alive but separated across two entirely different realities. The anime ends with this separation intact. While it concludes the story in terms of action and major character arcs, it leaves the emotional core, Ed and Al's reunion, unresolved, which led to some mixed reactions. Some fans appreciated the emotional weight, others felt it lacked closure. In 2005, Studio Bones released a sequel film titled Full Metal Alchemist: Conqueror of Shambhala. It picks up 2 years after the end of the anime. Edward is still in Munich, now living with a man called Alphonse Heydrich, an alternate version of Alphonse from that universe. He's working with German scientists and inventors during a time of political unrest while searching for a way back to his own world. On the other side, Alphonse has been studying alchemy and is determined to reunite with his brother. Using ancient texts, he figures out how to open a gateway between the different worlds. At the same time, a group of occultists from our world, the Thule Society, wants to reach Amestris to exploit its power, which brings both brothers into conflict with figures from both worlds, including alternate versions of familiar characters like Hughes and Tucker. Eventually, the gateway between the two worlds is opened. Ed and Al fight side by side once more, even though it's brief. After stopping the Thule Society, they make a choice. Rather than risk the two worlds colliding or being used again, they decide to stay in our world, Germany, with the gate permanently closed. The movie ends with the Elric brothers reunited. They're far from home and without alchemy, which is technically a resolution. Many fans felt the setting shift towards real-world history was jarring, but others believe the story didn't fully answer key questions or carry the same emotional impact as the manga's ending. While Conqueror of Shambhala gave the 2003 anime a definitive endpoint, it still felt disconnected from the tone and structure of Arakawa's work. It remained a separate continuity, which was more experimental and more ambiguous. Compared to the tight conclusion of Brotherhood, the 2003 timeline left viewers with a different kind of ending, which was shaped by sacrifice and separation rather than fulfillment. Streaming, legacy, and remakes. After years of DVD and Blu-ray sales, both the 2003 anime and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood found new audiences through Netflix, Crunchyroll, and other services. Brotherhood in particular became one of the most rewatched and recommended anime on those platforms. Casual audiences and longtime fans rewatched the show and rekindled their interest in it and its characters. For many, Brotherhood became their gateway into anime. Its clean animation, focused storytelling, and complete arc made made it accessible in a way that many other long-running series just aren't. In 2017, a live-action adaptation was produced in Japan, focusing on the early chapters of the manga. It received a divided response, but it reminded people about the original work. There were 2 follow-up live-action films, The Revenge of Scar and The Final Alchemy, which dealt with what came afterwards in the manga. These versions were more loyal and were introduced worldwide on Netflix, extending the story of the franchise across the world. By 2025, the franchise was still part of the larger anime conversation. Brotherhood remains one of the highest-rated anime on platforms like MyAnimeList and IMDb. It frequently charted best-of lists and was largely cited as the perfect example of how to adapt a manga properly. Hiromu Arakawa, the creator of the original manga, has also remained active. In recent years, she began work on a new anime project with the same animation studio that produced Brotherhood, further fueling speculation about possible spin-offs or returns to the Full Metal Alchemist universe. Fans have been waiting patiently since the obvious need is there, yet no official continuation has been announced. The longevity of Full Metal Alchemist has been because of its completeness. Brotherhood gave viewers a beginning, middle, and end with emotional weight and narrative payoff. The 2003 version was more experimental, but still, it hits the note with fans who appreciate its tone and focus on characters. Collectively, they are a unique example of the franchise that succeeded under dual versions. More than 20 years later, Full Metal Alchemist is still being watched, talked about, and shared every day. What's next? Creator Arakawa's new projects. In 2021, Hiromu Arakawa launched a new manga called Daemons of the Shadow Realm, Yomi no Tsugai, which is set in a rural mountain village and follows a pair of twins, Yuru and Asa. Their lives take a turn when Asa is taken away and Yuru discovers secrets about the external world. Their story is tied to supernatural entities called Tsugai, each linked to powerful forces that exist in secret. From the beginning, the series drew attention for its familiar strengths of tight pacing, complex sibling dynamics, and high-stakes moral questions. The emotional core is similar to Full Metal Alchemist, even though the setting and rules are different. It's a fantasy story, but it stays focused on people and their relationships. By 2025, Daemons of the Shadow Realm had gained a steady following. The next step came during July's Anime Expo, where Studio Bones officially announced an anime adaptation. This is the same team behind Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, who are returning to work with Arakawa more than 15 years later, which alone got people talking. The teaser released at Anime Expo didn't give much away, but the animation style and tone felt immediately familiar. It showed glimpses of the twins, a few Tsugai battles, and short flashes of rural landscapes and military interiors, suggesting a story that will span different environments and layers of conflict. The anime doesn't have a release date yet, but fans are looking forward to it closely. For longtime followers of Arakawa's work, this project feels like the natural next step. It's a return to a style of storytelling that balances world building with grounded emotional character arcs. And with the same studio involved, expectations are high. The studio has a reputation for handling action and emotion well, which they already understand with the rhythm of Arakawa's writing. The announcement also landed at the right time, with Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood still streaming on major platforms and new fans discovering the series every year. There's already renewed attention on her work. Daemons of the Shadow Realm could easily find a wide audience, both from returning fans and people coming in fresh. What happens next depends on how the anime handles the source material, but it's clear Arakawa still has stories worth telling and an audience ready to hear them. Marvelous verdict! At the end of the day, both Full Metal Alchemist and Brotherhood left a lasting impression in different ways. The 2003 series took creative risks with a darker, original story that still resonates with a lot of viewers, and Brotherhood stayed true to the manga and delivered a more complete, emotionally grounded finale. With Arakawa working on a new series and Studio Bones returning to adapt her latest work, it's a good time to be a fan. Let us know what you thought of the finale or what you're hoping to see next from Arakawa or the Full Metal Alchemist series. As always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for sticking around and we'll catch you in the next one. Until then, stay curious and stay marvelous.
Okay, well, my icon thing ain't popping up. All right, well, yeah, man, yes, sirs. Like I told you, I knew he was a fan. I knew he was a fan, a fellow fan of this a Full Metal Alchemist franchise. 2003 version, yeah, the original. Well, I'm going to say the original, but the first version, yeah. I'm in agreement with that. Yep, and I believe that's I think the sense of that is universal. Uh, with it basically not giving you the proper closure, as Brotherhood did, basically left you feel fulfilled. They didn't need to come with a movie to give you a little bit better, of a satisfying feeling when it comes to one decent ending to a great story. So, yeah, because Brotherhood, man, just smoked 2003 out the frame, man. It just shit. Yeah, that was a dip, and yep, and the themes of it too, man. Where you can dive deep into is and take lessons from is the sacrifice and the bravery and the manhood that they had to display, in order to reach that particular ascension, which is, in order for you to receive what you lost, basically you got to sacrifice, what's been near and dear to you, which was alchemy. So, he sacrificed that to get his, he had to get his brother back and his arm. So, and yeah, the whole ending of that was, very satisfying. And, but yeah, so yeah, guys, like I said, man, I come through later on when I fire up this movie night. The link for the movie night should be there in the chat and in the description. So, and man, it's gonna be super fire, I tell you, because brother Ray, your brother Ray Hanma over here. I ain't watching no bullshit, nothing but the badass. You hear me? And this is gonna be badass. This depiction of the history of Sensei Oyama, a Korean, veteran, a war veteran who went through some great struggles, growing up and also through after the war, what I mean? And when he was all in Japan, facing different prejudices and really dangerous challenges. But such challenges caused him to rise up to be a legend because of the great courage and masculinity that he displayed. This movie gives you nothing but man mode. So yeah, check it out. So that, and also we'll be watching Triple Threat and One Piece. So the last two episodes, since they came out with it, so before they made that announcement that they was going to go over to shift over to give them out in seasons instead of every week. So disappointment. Then again, hey, there's plenty of other projects out there that's going on. So yeah. Oh, didn't mean to press that. Okay. Yeah. So so yeah, that, and then after that we'll be diving back into our ongoing series Kingdom, which will be having the Great War. I think it was the Great War over there in China started with 256 BC, somewhere around there. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna check that out, and also too. Yep, I didn't forget what I told y'all, that we will be checking out the movies of Kingdom, the live adaptation movies. So, last time I checked, there was like 4 of them. So yeah, we will be checking that out, and I'll be putting up one between each season. So after this third season of this great war going on, this coalition war, I'll be showing the first live adaptation movie. So yeah, check it out. All right, guys. Please hit the like, bless the Cash App, bless the Hanma Force if you will. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and follow. And yeah, I'm not your fan. I'm not your stand for. I am brother. One versus a million. This your guy, Ray Hanma. I'm out. Peace.